What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Christian Hanna Horror here. Today it's 1982, and these are just going to get tougher and tougher as we go along. So here we go. I'm just going to get right into this, guys. It's going to be, as usual, controversial. I'm going to have movies that you may thought I would have put on here that I didn't, or maybe they're not in the spot you thought I'd have put them on here. I may have not included a movie that you may think is sacrilege, but it's just a movie I don't enjoy, but whatever. Let's just get into it. You guys ready? Number 5 for me is going to be Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Yes, that's right. It's at number 5, and you're probably wondering why. Well, look, here's the deal. I am not a person that just, if I say my favorite movie is such, that does not mean I think it's better than every other movie out there. I try to be reasonable. Now, all my favorite movies are not necessarily movies I think are the best movies ever. But Halloween 5 does make this list. 1982 was a tough year for movies as far as how good some movies were, and absolutely Halloween 5 deserves to be on this list, but not number 1. Don't need to really say much about Halloween 5. We all know the movie. Some of us absolutely adore it. Some of us absolutely hate it, and others just think it's okay. I fall in the category of absolutely loving it, obviously, and I definitely think it deserves to be on this list. I love Halloween 5. So that is going to be, Halloween 3. But that is going to be number 5 on this list. So let's move on. Here we go. Coming in at number 4 is a movie called The Slayer. That's right, The Slayer, a awesome horror movie from 1982. A movie that I saw this past year, and I absolutely loved it. It's a movie that I believe Arrow put it out, and I either have it on Arrow or Scream Factory. I believe it was Arrow, and just wasn't expecting a whole lot. Saw it was from this year, and I was like, okay, let me give this a shot. Visceral, a horror movie. Absolutely loved it. And, you know, I'm putting movies on this list that I think are for, if somebody's going to dive into this year and get a real taste of what horror movies were, I've got to put The Slayer on there. I do. I think The Slayer is a great movie, and it definitely deserves to be in my top 5. So that's number 4. Coming in at number 3, you guys ready? Friday the 13th, 3D. That's right. I got a little bit of hell raised on me because I did not put 2 in last year's top 5. Well, that's because I think that the Friday the 13th were kind of like, this was like the third shot at the target. You know, you take your first shot, you maybe off a little bit. You take your second shot, you get a little bit closer. Here's your third shot at what you're trying to get. Boom, bullseye. And I think that's what happened with Friday the 13th. 3D or Friday the 13th Part 3. I just think that Friday the 13th Part 3, in order of how they're made, Friday the 13th Part 3 is the best so far, and it definitely deserves to be in my top 5 of 1982. Friday the 13th and Part 3 in 3D works as just a great slasher movie. It works as a 3D movie. The score from Harry is great. The performance from Richard Brooker is haunting, terrifying, and it's a great setting. You've got a great cast. It's a great movie. It is a movie. It is an experience. It is a roller coaster ride, Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D, and it is a piece of absolute history. So there's no way Friday the 13th, Part 3 could have not been on my list. So I'm going to give you guys my number 2, then I'll give you honorable mentions, and then I'll explain why there's a certain movie that's on my honorable mentions. Number 2, you guys are going to be surprised. The Thing. That's right, number 2 is The Thing. I know you guys know that, a lot of you know that I think The Thing is John's best movie, but it's not number 1 on this list. I thought long and hard about this, but when it comes to The Thing is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Point blank, period. I do think it's John Carpenter's best made film. I do think it's his scariest film. And when it comes to 1982, there's not a movie out there that I think is more haunting, terrifying, sheer terror than John Carpenter's The Thing. So, there's another movie on this list that, actually, I think there's probably 2 going through you guys' minds saying, well, this has to be number 1. But he also hasn't said this. Let me give you guys 2 of my honorable mentions. The first honorable mention, and I want to give a shout-out to a local friend of mine, Kalen. The first one, and this is one of his favorites, is Basket Case. That's right, Basket Case, the B-movie, if you will, of you know, these two brothers, and one of them was this deformity that was on the side of him that he got taken off, and it's a creepy little movie. It is a cult classic, if you will, basket case, and it deserves to get mentioned, absolutely. The other honorable mention that might be controversial, Steven Spielberg's Poltergeist. That's right, it's an honorable mention. Now, before you start throwing bananas at me and tomatoes, the reason Poltergeist did not make my top 5, I rewatched it 3 days ago, and while I enjoyed it, it almost feels a little too Hollywood for me. It almost feels like it meets you halfway a little bit. I didn't really feel any visceral fear or tension in Poltergeist. I think it's just a horror movie that the family can watch and get spooked out at, but I feel like it meets you halfway a little bit. That could be sacrilege. Some of you may completely disagree. I'm not taking anything away from Poltergeist. It's an American piece of history, but it is an honorable mention for me. My number 1 for 1982, guys, is Creepshow. That's right, Creepshow. The reason I have Creepshow at number 1 is what it was able to do with itself. Now, while The Thing is so haunting and horrifying, Creepshow hits me in a certain spot. It hits me right here in my heart and my soul. It is a horror movie that... Now, I don't want to try to sound hypocritical, because Creepshow doesn't necessarily make me have any fear or feel a lot of tension, but Creepshow has that element that can tug at my heartstrings at how much I enjoy watching it. It is a live comic book, and it has done perfectly. Every story is its own entity. It draws you in. It keeps you entertained. The music is fantastic. It was written by Stephen King, and it is one of George Romero's best movies he ever directed. Creepshow will never, ever die. It is one of the most classic horror movies of the 1980s, point blank, period, and it makes my number 1 for 1982. I went back and forth a lot with The Thing and Creepshow, and as horrifying and as incredible as The Thing is, there is a charm and an adoration that Creepshow has for a lot of horror fans that cannot be denied, and it is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. So there it is, guys. That's my list. Controversial, different, but I can tell you guys this. If I thought that 1982 was hard, 1983 is going to be even tougher. But that's it, guys. So obviously, cannot wait to see what you guys think. What a challenge this is going to be. It's fun, but it's a challenge. As always, give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying these. Be sure to join me through the rest of the 1980s, because it's only going to get harder. As always, please tell me your top 5 and what I left out that you think I should have had in here, or give me a movie that I need to see that maybe I haven't seen from 1982. Until next time, we'll get 1983. This is Christian Hanna Horror.